Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mithril Zenith, and I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is an est? If you got that reference, congratulations, you're old. But yes, I'm asking this question because after the success of the Trainees and Villagers video, I've been trying to think of, how do I do one for ests, for late game projects? And I've done the video talking about Nino, and I've done the video trying to talk in general about late game training projects, but this concept of an est keeps coming up. And what an est is that's different from other late game training project units. And that somehow an est is different and unique and represents a particular subset of late game low level units that somehow is more special and somehow is very well defined, even though I would argue is very poorly defined. It has specific definitions that are very vague and don't actually have direct applicability, is my argument, and that's what I'm going to bring forward here. So the primary examples that everyone brings up that make up an est is that they are a late joining unpromoted unit with high growth rates and good bases for their level. What does any of that mean without context? Nothing. So late joining as compared to what? The original est joins in chapter 18 with a game of 25 chapters, so roughly 2/3 of the way through. Someone like Nino joins in after chapter 28 out of 32, I want to say, something. It depends on Hector and Eliwood mode, but she joins and there are four main chapters left, technically if you include Eliwood and Hector's trial. And then potentially 3 or 4 more Gaiden chapters. It's complicated, it's confusing. What is that in compared to the rest of the game, especially if you're including Lin mode into that? That's a weird percentage, it's a very much smaller percentage. But you look at other units then, it's like, okay, well, is this an est or is this just a late joining unpromoted unit? How late does it have to join to be an est versus not? That's where, in theory, other narrowing terms come in. It's like high growth rates. High compared to what? Is it high compared to the other units in the game, or is it high in general? Like, for instance, Three Houses units have very high growth rates compared to many earlier units, particularly like FE6 and FE5 units and whatnot. But you wouldn't necessarily say that they have particularly high growth rates compared to each other. And so it's like, okay, you have certain units that have very high growth rates in a vacuum, but are those really that much higher than other units? Like, if you consider Est herself and her growth rates in Fire Emblem 1, the very first game that everyone points to is like, she had good growth rates. It's like, okay, she has 70% strength, skill, weapon level, speed, 60% luck, 20% defense, 50% HP, 0 resistance, but no one had resistance. That is basically the same, if not lower, than Katria's, who has 70 HP, 40 strength, 80 skill, 70 weapon level, 80 speed, 40 luck, 10 defense. No wait, 30 defense. I'm blending the grid I'm looking at. It's too many units all at once. But it's like, that's comparable. It's like you moved a couple points around, but that's about it. Also, that's FE1's version of growth rate tables, which is hilarious, but I'm not going to get into that right now. That's a whole other rabbit hole. So it's like, okay, she's not bad growth rates. These are definitely good, but they're like comparable to the rest of the cast, or at least comparable to other units with decent growth rates. Like Lind has 70 hit points, 70 skill, 70 weapon level, 60 speed, 80 luck, 20 defense. You have a lot of units that have these reasonable growth rates. And so saying that Est has somehow like the best growth rates in the game, yeah, sure, her growth total might be quite good, and her growth rates are in good places, but she's not, like, so much higher in growth rates than other units that it's like, oh, she's going to be by far a standout if you level her. So, good growth rates, that's a questionable term as well. What do you mean by good? Good compared to what? Good in terms of it gives you what? And good basis for level. Okay, that's another thing we can talk about. The original S doesn't necessarily fit this bill. She has a base level of 5, she has 22 HP, 6 strength, 7 skill, 11 weapon level, 13 speed, 8 defense. Compare that to Sita, who you get at level 1 in Chapter 1 with 16 HP, 3 strength, 6 skill, 8 weapon level, 12 speed, 9 luck, 7 defense. And it's pretty comparable. She has, okay, a little bit better strength compared on average, weapon level, HP, and the rest is like fine? Not bad, but like on par, if not slightly below where Sita would be with her stats. And so it's, you know, what does that even mean, good basis for level? Maybe this is an application that was added with later units that were added to the Est archetype, but this is not necessarily true with Est herself. They're not bad, but they're not, like, fantastic. And so I would say, what is an Est? Is an Est just a collection of traits that we found across other units that we are then retroactively reapplying into this one core archetype just because we can then use it to describe units without having to actually describe them? I have a big frustration with the refusal to use words by some people, that they will insist on using 20 words, but then they will defend that insistence on using 20 words by using 2,000 words to defend their insistence on why they can only use 20 words, and why it somehow should be intuited exactly what they're meaning, even though that's not how language works. I guess I have more of a problem with language than I do with the Est archetype, but let's get back onto the Est archetype so I can keep this relatively Fire Emblem focused. So, if the big three that everyone seems to agree upon are late joining, high growth rates, and maybe good basis for level, though that one's a little bit more iffy, what are the others? What are the other traits of an Est? What makes an Est? I've written down some various examples of things that I've found people claiming are Ests, and it's like, okay, are true Ests flyers or Pegasus Knights specifically? Are true Ests the third in a triangle? Are true Ests pink? Are true Ests, do they have like some sort of unique aspect to them? Are true Ests, can a Tiki be an Est, like a Manakete? Can a Manakete be your Est, even though the Manakete is like a wholly different archetype that's like a specialist in its own way, that's also late joining, that usually joins even later than Est anyway, at a lower level with lower bases, but then has higher potential because they're specialists? Like, can a Tiki be an Est, or are we just applying this Est archetype to everything that looks like it? It's like, if it looks like an Est and quacks like an Est, it's an Est. It's like, it's not an Est, though! So, if we include those, heck, we can even include, like, hey, they're a captive, or they have to be rescued in some way. What do we include? Okay, if we try to include as many of those as possible, like flyer, late joining, low level, third in a triangle, not even a triangle necessarily, but like, okay, what are true Ests? Is Est an Est? Is Edda an Est? Is Alencia an FE9 an Est? Is Farina an FE7 an Est? Because she is a later joining, the third joining Pegasus Knight, relatively lower level, pretty good growth rates, part of a triangle attack. She's not pink themed, so I guess we don't have that. Is Zeus an Est? I've heard him talked about as an Est, even though he's a Wyvern rider, but he has some of those traits of being lower level, of having decent growth rates, of being a flyer, of being a captive, of joining relatively late, like you only have like a handful of chapters, like the Sakai arc, or is it after Sakai? I think he joins before Sakai, but it's been a while since I've used Zeus. Anyway, so true Ests, if they're flyers as well as being unpromoted, as well as having decent growths, you know, are those true Ests? Are the community assumed Ests really just underlevel units that may or may not have good growths? Because these ones start to drop different factors. You have Nino, who has a lot of these factors, but I think a lot of the factors are actually more true of Nino than they are of Est herself, of being particularly late joining, of having particularly decent bases for her level, of having particularly decent growths, of, you know, all these different things, these particularities, but that she's not Est. She's not part of a triangle, she's not a flyer, and so it's like, okay, we are shaving this definition down to fit Nino, even though it's not really about Est herself anymore. Do you see the problem with that? And then, okay, what are some other community-assumed Ests, then, that fall into the more Nino-like category? We have Sarah and Miranda, we have Sophia, we have FE9's Tormod, we have Ewan, heck, we have Marisa. Marisa joins in the same chapter as Garrick, but no one says Garrick is an Est. Why are we saying Marisa is an Est? Is Marisa only an Est in Ephraim's chapters, but not in Erica's? does, like, a 2-chapter difference really matter when they're still joining basically between 50% to 2/3 of the way through the game? Does any of this matter? I don't know. Why are Ewan and Marisa considered the Ests of FE8? FE8 doesn't really have any Ests, but we feel the need to apply this term to every game, and so, boom, they join. They're the latest joining unpromoted unit. You're an Est now. People say, oh, Myrrh is the Est. No, Myrrh is the Tiki. Myrrh is the Dragon. Myrrh is the Manakete that joins the latest possible, but has a very unique special role that they're very good at. Tiki joins. Couple chapters she's useless in. Then you throw her against the dragon and she melts the dragon even if she's not trained. Myrrh joins. Couple chapters where you just kind of have to slog to train her if you want to train her. But you throw her even unpromoted, unleveled, at a monster and she melts the monster. You have these examples of units that you are trying to say are one way, and they are so not that way. Okay, Tikis that are not S. Tiki, that's Myrrh, that's Faye, that's Enna in FE9 and FE10, I guess, and that's Kurthnaga. Kurthnaga is not an S. Kurthnaga is a Tiki. Kurthnaga is a Manakete. He's a dragon, sure, dragon leaves, but basically the same thing. He has a unique role in that none of the dragons attack him in the tower. He's only trainable and trainable in the tower. He joins after all of your lower level units. He is the lowest level unit that joins at the end of the game, and so people automatically assume, oh, he's the Est then because he joins so low level and so late. Forgetting that Tiki joins after Est, but we're not calling Tiki an Est, are we? Are we? I don't know if anyone's called Tiki an Est, but, you know, at this rate, it would not surprise me. And then we have some weird Ests that people talk about that make no sense to me. I've talked about Marisa, but like Jessie and Atlas and Rosado and the Awakening and Fate's Children can be lumped in here as like Est types. It's like, why are these Ests? They join early, or they don't have good growths, or they have unnotable bases, or they have nothing to do with anyone else. They're not captives, they're not pink, they're not flyers. What even is an Est? I don't know. I'm probably way overcomplicating this, but I need you to understand that when you say an Est is a very simple archetype, it has 3 main features. Those main features are not even held by the original Est. Stop using the archetype, or at least define the archetype when you use it. That's more what I care about. I don't care about, oh, we're not gonna, like, you can use language. Don't stop using language. But define what the language means, because other people might have a different understanding of what language you're using. Back to Ests. Some Ests are staff users. Staff users are not Ests. Elise is not an Est. Tatiana is not an Est. Corporal or Charlo is not an Est. Larachelle is not an Est. Hortensia is not an Est. Because these are not, like, because they are staff users, and staff users have totally different roles to combat units. Why are combat units Ests and staff users not? Or why are staff users Ests if it doesn't matter? It doesn't matter! And I've never heard these units called Ests, but technically they fulfill the role, so gotcha, sucker. Juno and Cyrene are Ests too, because they complete their triangles. I hate my life. Okay, so what is an Est? I don't know. Can someone explain this to me? Let me know. I hope this rant was at least enjoyable, if not informative. I think the Est archetype is potentially interesting. I think that it does definitely mean something. I think we just need to be a little bit more clear about what specifically it means, because when you go around throwing loaded terms like Est onto units, suddenly people hate those units. Or suddenly people love those units. Like, for instance, people love Ewan. And then people started throwing the label Est on him, and everyone started hating on Ewan because he's the Est. It's like, no! He's a mid-game trainee mage. He's not an Est. He has 10 whole chapters and a really easy time leveling up, and you have the Volney Tower to level him up if you don't care about that. You know, what is an Est? I don't know. But I hope that this helps you to not know either. Or if you do know, explain it to me, because I'm not necessarily going to have that same opinion that an est is easy to qualify or hard to qualify or whatever. I might not think an est is the same thing you think an est is, so explain your terminology when you use it. That's all I'm trying to say here. But with that rant out of the way, I hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for listening and watching. Big shout out to Royal Laguz Guard member Sal Mellon and the rest of Laguz Guard. We have C2 Peekly, Enigmatic Mr. L, the Big Hermit 007, Bro Duderman, NKO Rico, Kumi, Miss Mesmerism, Lakag, and Relaz 6. Thank you so much for joining the channel. Anyone else who wants to can join the channel for less than $1 a month at Laguz Guard tier. You'll get your shout outs, you'll get notifications, whatever I choose to decide for channel members. You get videos like this early. You get early access to videos. Thank you so much. This is Mithra Zenith signing out.